The automatic doors of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport hissed open, and Raymond Dandridge stepped into the departure terminal. To the untrained eye, he was just another traveler, a 57-year-old black man in a dark blue windbreaker, pressed slacks, and a plain black leather briefcase swinging gently at his side. No fanfare, no security entourage, no visible badge. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, he paused, scanning the bustling scene at Security Checkpoint C. Travelers shuffled through lines, some hurried, others resigned, their faces a mosaic of exhaustion and anticipation. Raymond didn't seem like much, just a man moving through the world with quiet certainty. But beneath that calm exterior burned a mission he couldn't share with the crowd around him. For nearly 3 decades, Raymond had served the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA). His early years were spent poring over aircraft maintenance protocols, ensuring bolts were tightened and systems checked. But as time passed, and reports of mistreatment on the ground began to pile up, his role evolved. He no longer wore a uniform. His power now lay in what he observed and what he could report. Today's trip wasn't just business, it was a test. A field audit prompted by 4 complaints over 2 months, all pointing to a troubling pattern at certain gates. Black and brown travelers stopped, questioned, and sometimes denied boarding without clear justification. Security concerns, the reports vaguely noted. So here he was, alone, his true identity hidden from TSA agents, gate crew, and passengers alike. That was the point. Raymond moved through the terminal with purpose, his eyes sharp but unobtrusive. He wasn't looking for drama, he was looking for patterns. Who was spoken to with respect, who got extra questions, who received side glances, and who was waved through with a smile. He stopped at a coffee kiosk, ordering a small Americano from a barista with a nose ring and nervous energy. "Flying domestic or international today?" the kid asked, handing over the cup. "International," Raymond replied, sipping the drink. "Toronto, nice. You ever been?" "A few times," Raymond said with a faint smile. "I always learn something new." It wasn't a lie. Toronto was a favorite city for inspections, straightforward, good people. But today, his focus was on Gate C14. The corridor hummed with the crackle of airport announcements. "Final boarding call for Flight 8008, 102 to Montreal. Passengers, please report to Gate A2 immediately." Raymond didn't rush. He had time. He noted the gate agents he passed, their expressions, their body language. Some offered polite smiles, others barely looked up. When he reached C14, the area was moderately full. Passengers slouched in plastic chairs, half listening for boarding calls. A mother balanced a baby on her hip while scrolling her phone. A man in a sharp suit argued quietly on Bluetooth. The air carried the faint scent of pretzels and carpet cleaner. At the counter stood a woman with platinum blonde hair and narrow glasses, typing rapidly into a terminal. Her name tag read S. Wilcox. Her brows were drawn tight, her focus intense. Raymond stepped forward, passport in hand. "Good afternoon," he said politely, just checking in for the Toronto flight. She didn't look up. "Passport?" He handed it over. She flipped it open, staring at the page longer than necessary. Her fingers hesitated, then her eyes flicked up to meet his. "You sure this is yours?" Raymond blinked, confused but composed. "Yes, this doesn't look right," she muttered, more to herself than to him. She turned the passport over again, her brow furrowing. A small scoff escaped her lips. "What's your purpose for visiting Canada?" "Business," he answered without hesitation. What kind of business? Transportation. It was vague enough to maintain his cover, but accurate. Her fingers tapped the desk. I'm gonna need to verify this, she said flatly, stepped to the side. Raymond complied, moving a few feet back near a support column. He leaned against it, watching her as she dove back into the system, shaking her head. He caught the glance she gave the passenger behind him, a look that said, "Can you believe this guy?" That's when he knew. This wasn't new to him. Suspicion often landed on him like a weight before he could even speak. But something told him this wasn't going to be just another report. This time, it would get messy. Stephanie Wilcox didn't know she was being watched, not just by Raymond, but by several sets of eyes in the boarding area. Some were curious, others cautious. People notice things, even if they pretend not to. Raymond stayed quiet, his hands still, his posture relaxed. Patience, observation, restraint. These were the tools of his trade, but even for someone with his experience, there were limits. Stephanie tapped furiously at the keyboard, muttering under her breath. The next passenger, a white man in his 30s wearing a Harvard hoodie, stepped up. "Passport," she said. He handed it over. 5 seconds later, she was smiling. "You're all set, Mr. Riley. Enjoy your flight." He nodded and moved along. Raymond took a slow breath. Another passenger came up, then another, each processed faster than he had been, each greeted with a smile or a simple question. After 5 minutes, he stepped forward again. "Excuse me," he said evenly. "I just wanted to check. Has my document been verified?" Stephanie didn't look at him, still reviewing. She kept typing, then sighed loudly enough for nearby heads to turn. "Sir," she said, finally meeting his eyes, "I'm gonna ask you again. Are you sure this is your passport?" Raymond held her stare. "Yes, I am. Because this photo doesn't look like you." A woman seated nearby glanced up, frowning slightly as she looked between Raymond and the passport in Stephanie's hand. Raymond remained calm. "It's a current passport, issued last year." "Where were you born?" Stephanie asked abruptly. "Baltimore." She squinted. "And your middle name?" "Lorenzo." She typed again, her eyes narrowing. Then she said it. "This looks fake anyway." Before Raymond could respond, she grabbed the passport by the edge and tore it in half. A sharp gasp came from someone behind him. Another voice whispered, "No way." The torn pieces lay on the counter like discarded trash. Stephanie crossed her arms, as if she'd just solved a minor inconvenience. "You'll need to wait for airport security. You might be detained for attempting to travel with forged documents." Raymond stared at her for a long moment, then spoke, his voice steady. "I need you to repeat what you just said." She smirked slightly. "You heard me." Silence stretched between them. Passengers shifted in their seats. Some pulled out phones, recording quietly. This wasn't just a customer service issue anymore. It was a scene. A woman in jeans and a long coat, filming from behind the rope divider, spoke up. "Ma'am," he didn't even raise his voice. He just asked about his passport. "Please step back," Stephanie snapped. A young man wearing a Delta crew badge stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" Stephanie turned to him. "I have a potential forgery case. I've already destroyed the document." The crew member looked stunned. "You tore up his passport. It was fake." The man turned to Raymond. "Sir, do you have another form of ID?" Raymond opened his briefcase and pulled out his federal ID, showing it briefly, just long enough for the young man's face to change. "Sir, is this? Are you with the FAA?" Raymond's voice remained calm. "I am." He put the badge away. "And I'll be needing the names of every gate staff member on duty immediately." The silence that followed was heavy. Stephanie's face froze. Passengers didn't know whether to cheer, record more, or sit in stunned silence. You've just torn up the passport of a federal inspector conducting a live audit, Raymond added. You've also made public accusations and denied a passenger boarding access without cause. I suggest you call your supervisor now. The damage was done, and it wouldn't be swept under the rug. Phones rose like sunflowers to the sun, capturing every angle. The tension in the air cracked open. Whispers turned to murmurs, then audible words. Did she really tear it? Did he say FAA? Yo, that's gonna be everywhere by tonight. The woman in the long coat kept filming, her phone tilted to catch Raymond's composed expression. He wasn't yelling or throwing accusations, just standing there, the picture of control, while everything around him began to unravel. Stephanie's confidence crumbled. Her arms folded tightly across her chest, her eyes darting to her computer, as if it could undo what had just happened. The young Delta crew member was now on a handheld radio, speaking quickly as he stepped away from the counter. A middle-aged man in a charcoal blazer approached Raymond. "Sir, would you like a seat while this is sorted out?" "I'm fine," Raymond replied, "but thank you." Behind him, a man with a tablet muttered, "This is why people don't trust flying anymore." A woman nearby nodded. This is happening in broad daylight, right in front of everybody. I knew something was off with her attitude from the start. She was all sugar to the folks before him. Another passenger added. Then he walks up and she flips the switch. From the other side of the terminal, an older gate agent from C13 appeared, gesturing subtly for Stephanie to come over. She didn't move. Instead, she turned to Raymond, her voice lower now. "I'm sure we can work this out without it becoming something bigger." Raymond's gaze didn't waver. "You made it something bigger the moment you assumed my identity was false." She flinched. It wasn't shouted, but it landed. A security guard approached, looking confused, as if only half briefed. "Everything all right here?" Raymond turned slowly. "She destroyed a federal document, mine, without cause." The guard blinked. "You want to file a report?" "Oh, he's more than filing a report," a woman said sharply from the row of chairs. "Check Twitter." Another passenger waved his phone. "I posted it 2 minutes ago. Got 300 views already. It's climbing." Stephanie turned to the guard. He refused to comply with document verification protocol. Raymond interrupted, still calm. "I handed you a valid, active U.S. passport. I answered your questions. I stood aside when asked. The video footage will show that." He gestured toward the ceiling. "There are cameras right above us." The guard looked up, his hand instinctively going to the mic on his shoulder. "Dispatch," he said, "need to confirm surveillance availability at Gate C14. Possible federal matter." A woman in a navy blazer, her heels clicking on the tile, approached with a clipboard and a badge reading zone supervisor. "Miss Wilcox," she said firmly, "please come with me." Stephanie hesitated, then followed. The supervisor turned to Raymond. "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" Raymond nodded, "Of course." They moved toward a hallway near the jet bridge, away from the crowd. But the ripple through the waiting area didn't stop. Phones stayed up, voices exchanged theories, some angry, some incredulous. "Man, they picked the wrong guy today. And he didn't even raise his voice. Nope, and he's got receipts." As Raymond disappeared into the hallway, the story was already growing legs. The internet wouldn't wait for an official statement. This wasn't just about one gate agent anymore. It was about every face she'd ever made uncomfortable, and every person who'd stayed silent while it happened. Inside the hallway, the air felt colder, not just from the vent humming overhead, but from the shift in tone. Raymond sat across from the zone supervisor, Nicole Morales, in a small room meant for badge checks and quick interviews. The walls were dull beige, worn by years of tense conversations. A camera blinked in the corner. Nicole closed the door softly and sat down, her clipboard resting on the table. She didn't look hostile, more like someone bracing for a storm. "I'm Nicole Morales," she began. "I just want to make sure we get everything on the record properly." "Mr. Dandridge, Raymond Dandridge," he confirmed. She clicked her pen. "Are you with the FAA?" He reached into his briefcase, pulled out his credentials, and handed them over. Her eyes scanned the gold seal, the official photo, the ID number. She stiffened. "You're doing an inspection?" "I was," he said plainly, until it turned into something else. Nicole exhaled through her nose. "I need to inform my terminal director and airport police." "I assumed as much," Raymond said. "You might want to retrieve the surveillance footage from Gate C14 while you're at it." She stood, suddenly aware of the weight of the situation. Raymond remained seated, tapping one finger slowly on the table. He wasn't nervous, just calculating. This wasn't his first time catching misconduct, but it was the first time someone had destroyed a federal passport in front of a crowd. A uniformed officer entered, his badge reading Sergeant D. Koenig. "Mr. Dandridge?" he asked. "Yes. I've been asked to escort you to the terminal office while we sort this out." Raymond gave a tight smile. "Am I being detained?" Koenig paused. "No, sir. We just need to clarify a few details. Then I'll walk." They moved down another hallway, Raymond flanked by Nicole and Koenig, toward the deeper security wing. Nicole's phone buzzed with notifications, her face tightening with each glance. When they reached the terminal office, it was already crowded. A junior supervisor stood near the desk, holding 2 printed pages, eyes wide. A woman with an airline legal badge whispered on the phone in the corner. Stress was contagious in that room. Raymond took a seat and opened his briefcase, pulling out a thin folder. Inside were 4 complaints submitted to the FAA, 4 names, 4 dates, 4 nearly identical allegations, all from travelers treated as suspicious at Gate C14 for no clear reason. He placed it on the table. Nicole read the first page, her jaw tightening. Why wasn't this flagged earlier? Raymond didn't answer immediately. Then, calmly, because this wasn't about getting someone fired. It was about seeing if the problem was as real as the complaints said it was. A younger staffer entered and whispered to Nicole. Her face changed. "What is it?" Raymond asked. "The video," she replied. "The one from a passenger's phone. It's already on 3 major news accounts." Raymond leaned back slightly. "That was fast, too fast," Nicole muttered. She looked toward the legal rep, who was now off the phone and visibly sweating. "This may go federal by tomorrow morning." Koenig stepped forward. "We've confirmed the security footage backs up your version of the incident. You stood calmly, answered her questions, never raised your voice." "I know," Raymond said, "but thank you for confirming it." Nicole cleared her throat. "Do you want to file a formal complaint now, or wait for the FAA investigation to complete?" Raymond looked at her. "You should be more worried about what's already been filed, because this isn't isolated, and you know it." While they scrambled to contain the leak, the public was already forming its opinion outside that room. Raymond wasn't there to argue or demand apologies. He had one job left: document everything and ensure Gate C14's failure couldn't be ignored. The airline's regional control office on the third floor wasn't built for chaos. Monitors typically displayed flight schedules, weather maps, and gate assignments. But now, staff were glued to tweets, scrolling comment sections, and fielding calls from PR teams and legal consultants. The digital war room had activated, and for once, it wasn't about lost luggage or delayed flights. Lana Feld, legal counsel for the airline's Southeast Division, walked in without her clipboard, her expression grim. "How bad is it?" She asked no one in particular. A tech at the far end of the room turned his monitor toward her. "You tell me." On screen was the top post on X, a passenger's video showing Raymond standing calmly, Stephanie tearing the passport, and several people reacting in real time. Lana watched in silence as the video looped. 58,000 shares in the last hour. The tech added, "It's already picked up by Morning America and CNBC. Damage control." Someone asked, "No." Lana said flatly, "This is past control. We're in containment mode." In a side room, a high-level briefing had begun. Nicole Morales sat stiffly, trying to keep her breathing steady. She'd been promoted to zone supervisor 6 months ago, and now her name was on an incident file marked Federal Violation Review. Across from her sat Lionel Griggs, the regional director, mid-50s, always on the verge of exploding but somehow holding it together. He slapped a printout on the table. "This agent, Wilcox, what the hell were we doing keeping her in rotation?" Nicole hesitated. "We had no written complaints on file, nothing formal. 4 passengers listed her by name in FAA complaints." Lionel barked, "You telling me not one of those made it back to your desk?" "I didn't see them. I'm not sure if HR stop," he said, holding up a hand. "This isn't about HR anymore. This is about the fact that one of our gate agents publicly humiliated and falsely accused a federal inspector on camera in broad daylight, surrounded by passengers, and she tore up his passport." He looked at Nicole hard. "She might have cost us federal partnerships." A junior assistant poked her head in. FAA Office of Communications just issued a statement confirming Mr. Dandridge was conducting a live inspection tied to profiling allegations. Lionel rubbed his temples. Lana rejoined the legal team, now fielding calls from regional managers, union reps, and journalists. The video hadn't just gone viral, it had gone nuclear. "I just got off the phone with CBC Toronto," she said. "They're asking why a black federal agent couldn't board a flight to Canada without being accused of fraud." Lana gave a cold smile. "They already know the answer. They just want us to say it out loud." "Has Wilcox been removed from all assignments?" Lana asked. Nicole nodded. "She's on administrative leave. We took her badge an hour ago." "Not good enough," Lana said. "We need a public-facing decision by 5 p.m., and we need internal guidance on what we tell our other agents if this spreads to other airports." A supervisor interrupted. "It already has. Someone just posted an old clip from LAX of a similar situation. Guess who the agent was?" Lana blinked. "You're joking." "Nope. Wilcox used to work LAX before she transferred last year. She had a rep." The PR officer looked up. "We've got about 6 hours before we're trending again on the evening news. What's the message?" Lana hesitated, then said, "You tell them the agent has been removed. We're cooperating with federal investigators, and we're reviewing all internal procedures relating to identity verification and gate conduct. Should we apologize?" "Not yet. If the FAA drops that audit report this week, we'll need to apologize for a lot more than just this." But Raymond's report wasn't the real problem anymore. It was what it would inspire next. By 2:17 p.m., The clip of Stephanie Wilcox tearing up Raymond Dandridge's passport had been reposted over 100,000 times. The footage was raw, no editing, no commentary, just a man standing quietly while his identity was questioned in front of a crowd. It wasn't just travel bloggers or civil rights pages sharing it now. CNN posted a still with the caption, "FAA inspector accused of forgery by airline staff during routine audit." MSNBC, CBC, and Al Jazeera followed. People weren't just reacting, they were outraged. "I've flown through that terminal. I know that look agents give you when they've already decided who you are. Imagine tearing up a federal document on camera and acting like you've got nothing to answer for." Raymond's name trended within an hour. His photo, pulled from an old aviation safety conference, floated beside headlines like "Wrong Man," "Wrong Move," and "FAA Undercover Inspector Humiliated at Gate C14. But it wasn't just sympathy he was receiving, it was validation. Flyers began posting their own stories. "2 years ago, she stopped me because I looked nervous. I was late for my mother's funeral. She asked my 12-year-old son if he'd really packed his own bag. Who does that?" It became clear this wasn't about one incident. It was a pattern now caught on tape, and people were less willing to doubt what others had quietly endured. Inside the FAA communications office in Washington, D.C., phones rang relentlessly. Internal Affairs had Raymond's preliminary summary, but Wanda Kim, the director, knew this case was different. She stood with her team reviewing the timeline on a large monitor, so he didn't reveal himself until after security took him aside. "Nope," an aide replied. Stayed in character until she doubled down, only showed ID when it was clear she'd made a serious error, and the crowd was completely on his side. No aggressive behavior on his part. Video backs it all up. Wanda nodded. He did exactly what we trained him to do. Quiet observation, document, then verify. Let them show you who they are. She turned to her assistant. "Have we pulled Wilcox's employee history?" "We did. It's not pretty. 2 internal reports closed without review, both from her time at LAX. Complaints about aggressive behavior and personal bias. Nothing escalated until now." Wanda closed her laptop. "Tell legal to prepare a statement. FAA will cooperate with all reviews, but will also issue a recommendation on staff conduct for Gate personnel working on federal contracts." Back in Atlanta, Stephanie Wilcox sat in a conference room far from Gate C14. Her badge was deactivated, her phone buzzing with screenshots, memes, and brutal commentary. Imagine being this confident and this wrong. She thought she could talk down to him. She didn't know he wrote the rule book. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. She didn't recognize this version of herself, but maybe she'd never had to face it until now. No manager had ever pulled her aside. No one had pushed back until today. Nicole Morales stepped in, arms folded, face unreadable. Stephanie didn't speak. Nicole sat across from her. "You're going to be contacted by the FAA within the next 48 hours for questioning, a written statement, and likely a full inquiry into your history here and in Los Angeles." Stephanie's voice was small. "I didn't know." Nicole stood. "That's the problem. The story had escaped the terminal walls. No one could unsee what they saw or unknow what they'd learned." Raymond Dandridge wasn't just a name anymore. He was a mirror, reflecting a system that had failed too many, for too long, in plain sight. The terminal office at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzed with a tension that clung to the air like static. Raymond Dandridge sat at the center of it, his briefcase open on the table, a thin folder of complaints resting beside his federal ID. The room was cramped, its beige walls and flickering fluorescent light doing little to ease the growing unease. Nicole Morales, the zone supervisor, stood near the door, her clipboard now abandoned on a chair. Two new faces had joined the scene: Earl Bronson, a regional operations manager with a reputation for putting out fires, and Lorna Feld, the airline's Southeast Division legal counsel, whose polished demeanor barely masked the stress radiating from her. The junior supervisor from earlier hovered near the desk, clutching printed pages that trembled slightly in her hands. A woman with an airline legal badge whispered into her phone in the corner, her voice low but urgent. The clock on the wall read 11:15 a.m. It hadn't even been 2 hours since Raymond stepped into the terminal, yet the world outside was already reshaping itself around what had happened at Gate C14. Raymond's voice cut through the room's hum, calm but unyielding. "I want to be clear," he said, looking at Lorna. "This isn't about a misunderstanding. Your gate agent destroyed a government-issued passport in a public setting, accused me of carrying forged documents, and created a disruption without following protocol." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "That's not a bad day. That's negligence." Earl leaned forward, his charcoal blazer creasing at the elbows. "We understand emotions were running high, mine weren't." Raymond interrupted, his tone still measured. The room fell silent, the kind of quiet that follows a truth no one wants to face. Earl sat back, his attempt at diplomacy stalled. Nicole reached into a drawer and slid a thin envelope toward Raymond. "The two halves of your passport," she said. "I thought you'd want to keep them for documentation." He looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "Thank you," he said, his voice neutral. Lorna cleared her throat, folding her hands like she was addressing a boardroom. "Mr. Dandridge, are you planning to pursue legal action?" "I'm not here to discuss lawsuits," he replied. "I'm here to complete my audit." He opened his folder and pulled out a printed sheet, sliding it across the table. "I'll be submitting this report to FAA Internal Affairs by the end of today. It includes full details of my experience, notes on staff behavior, gate surveillance, and the response from supervisors." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. "I've also included a pattern of complaints filed by travelers over the last 8 months. 5 of them involved Gate C14, 4 of those named Ms. Wilcox." Nicole's jaw tightened. Earl's face went blank. "We were unaware of that trend," he said, his voice strained. "That's part of the problem," Raymond replied. Lorna leaned forward, her voice careful. "If we request a follow-up meeting with our HR department and Diversity and Inclusion Division, would you be willing to join that conversation?" Raymond tilted his head slightly. "Your departments are welcome to do their part, but my responsibility is to report facts, not to help you write a better press statement." A junior staffer burst into the room, holding a tablet. "Ms. Morales," she whispered, her voice shaking. "The video, it's over 2.7 million views now. CNN requesting a statement, and so is Channel 5 Atlanta." Raymond leaned back, a faint sigh escaping his lips. "That was fast, too fast," Nicole muttered, glancing at Lorna, who was now visibly sweating. "This may go federal by tomorrow morning," Lorna said, more to herself than the room. Sergeant Koenig, the security officer, spoke up. "The surveillance footage confirms your account, Mr. Dandridge. You stood calmly, answered her questions, never raised your voice." "I know," Raymond said, "but thank you for confirming it." Nicole rubbed her forehead, her composure fraying. "Do you want to file a formal complaint now, or wait for the FAA investigation to complete?" Raymond's gaze was steady. "You should be more worried about what's already been filed. This isn't isolated, and you know it." The room felt smaller now, the air heavier. Outside, the terminal was anything but calm. The video had spread like wildfire, phones still raised in the waiting area, capturing every angle of the aftermath. Passengers exchanged theories, their voices a mix of anger and disbelief. "Man, they picked the wrong guy today," one said. "He didn't even flinch," another added, "and he's got receipts." On the third floor, the airline's regional control office had transformed into a crisis hub. Monitors that once tracked flight schedules and weather patterns now displayed social media feeds and news alerts. A tech at the far end of the room, wiry with a headset dangling off one ear, turned his screen toward Lana as she entered. "You tell me how bad it is," he said. The top post on X showed the passenger's video, Raymond's calm demeanor, Stephanie's sharp tear of the passport, the crowd's gasps. The caption read, "Gate agent destroys FAA inspector's passport in public. This is why we don't trust airlines." 58,000 shares in the last hour. The tech said, "Morning America and CNBC just tagged us. Damage control." A staffer asked. "No," Lana said, her voice flat. "We're in containment mode." In a side room, a high-level briefing was underway. Nicole sat across from Lionel Griggs, the regional director, whose temper was legendary but currently restrained. He slapped a printout on the table. "This agent, Wilcox, what were we doing keeping her in rotation?" Nicole hesitated. "We had no written complaints on file, nothing formal. 4 passengers listed her by name in FAA complaints." Lionel snapped. "Not one of those made it to your desk." "I didn't see them," Nicole said. "I'm not sure if HR—" "Stop," Lionel said, raising a hand. "This isn't about HR anymore. One of our gate agents humiliated a federal inspector on camera in broad daylight and tore up his passport. She might have cost us federal partnerships." A junior assistant poked her head in. FAA Office of Communications just issued a statement confirming Mr. Dandridge was conducting a live inspection tied to profiling allegations. Lionel rubbed his temples. Lana, now back with the legal team, was fielding calls from regional managers, union reps, and journalists. "I just got off with CBC Toronto," she said. "They're asking why a black federal agent couldn't board a flight to Canada without being accused of fraud. They already know the answer," Lana said, her smile cold. "They just want us to say it out loud." "Has Wilcox been removed?" Lana asked. "She's on administrative leave," Nicole replied. "Badge taken an hour ago." "Not good enough," Lana said. "We need a public-facing decision by 5 p.m. and internal guidance for other agents if this spreads to other airports." "It already has," a supervisor interjected. Someone posted an old clip from LAX. Same situation, same agent, Wilcox, before she transferred last year. She had a rep. Lana blinked. "You're joking?" "Nope." The PR officer looked up. 6 hours before we're trending again on the evening news. What's the message?" Lana hesitated. "The agent has been removed. We're cooperating with federal investigators, and we're reviewing all internal procedures relating to identity verification and gate conduct." "Apologize?" someone asked. "Not yet. If the FAA drops that audit report this week, we'll need to apologize for a lot more." Back in the terminal office, Raymond sat with his legs crossed, his FAA ID now resting visibly on the table. He wasn't there to negotiate or soothe egos. His job was to document, and he was doing it with surgical precision. The folder in front of him held not just the 4 complaints, but a detailed log of every interaction he'd observed at Gate C14. The smiles given to some passengers, the curt questions to others, the subtle shifts in tone. He'd noted the time 10:47 a.m. when Stephanie Wilcox tore his passport, and the exact words she'd used, "This looks fake anyway." He'd recorded the crowd's reactions, the security guard's confusion, and Nicole's delayed response. Every detail was a brick in the case he was building, not for punishment but for accountability. Nicole stood near the corner, her blazer now folded over a chair, sleeves rolled up. She looked like someone who'd realized she wasn't just part of the airport anymore. She was part of the story. "Mr. Dandridge," she said, her voice softer now, "is there anything we can do to resolve this here? You can start by addressing the complaints that never made it to your desk," he said, "and by ensuring no one else has to stand where I stood today." Earl tried again. "We're fully committed to investigating this incident and working with all federal agencies." "I'm sure you are," Raymond said, his tone neutral but cutting. He stood, sliding his folder back into his briefcase. "You've got a window to make this right. It won't stay open long." Nicole followed him to the door. "Where are you heading now?" "I'll finish my route," he said. "Then I'll be returning to D.C. in the morning." She looked like she wanted to say more, an apology perhaps, but couldn't find the words. Raymond walked past her, stepping back into the terminal hallway. A woman with a toddler strapped to her chest caught his eye and gave a quiet thumbs up. A man further down offered a respectful nod. Raymond didn't return the gestures, not because he didn't appreciate them, but because he knew this wasn't about him anymore. It was about every face Stephanie Wilcox had made uncomfortable, every person who'd stayed silent while it happened. In Washington, D.C., the FAA communications office was a hive of activity. Phones rang off the hook, and Wanda Kim, the director, stood with her team, reviewing the timeline on a large monitor. "So he didn't reveal himself until after security took him aside?" she asked. "Nope," an aide replied, "stayed in character until she doubled down, only showed ID when it was clear she'd made a serious error. Crowd was on his side, no aggression on his part, video backs it up." Wanda nodded. "He did exactly what we trained him to do. Observe, document, verify. Let them show you who they are." She turned to her assistant, Wilcox's employee history. "It's not pretty. 2 internal reports closed without review, both from LAX. Complaints about aggressive behavior and bias. Nothing escalated until now." Wanda closed her laptop. "Tell legal to prepare a statement. FAA will cooperate with all reviews and issue a recommendation on staff conduct for gate personnel on federal contracts." Back in Atlanta, Stephanie Wilcox sat in a conference room far from Gate C14. Her badge was gone, her phone a barrage of screenshots and memes. Imagine being this confident and this wrong. She didn't know he wrote the rule book. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. She didn't recognize this version of herself, but maybe she'd never had to face it. No one had ever pushed back, until today. Nicole stepped in, arms folded. "You're going to be contacted by the FAA within 48 hours for questioning, a written statement, and likely a full inquiry into your history here and in Los Angeles." Stephanie's voice was barely audible. "I didn't know. That's the problem," Nicole said, standing to leave. The story had legs now, sprinting across the internet. By 2:17 p.m. the video had been reposted over 100,000 times. CNN caption read, FAA inspector accused of forgery by airline staff during routine audit. MSNBC, CBC, and Al Jazeera followed. Comments exploded. "I've flown through that terminal. I know that look." Imagine tearing up a federal document on camera. Raymond's name trended, his photo from an old aviation safety conference plastered beside headlines like "Wrong man, wrong move." Flyers shared their own stories. "She stopped me because I looked nervous. I was late for my mother's funeral. She asked my 12-year-old if he'd packed his own bag." It wasn't just one incident anymore. It was a pattern, caught on tape, undeniable. The airline's regional control office was drowning in calls. Lana watched the video loop again, her jaw tight. 58,000 shares. The tech repeated and climbing. "Containment mode," Lana muttered, but containment was a fantasy. The story had broken free, and it was reshaping how people saw not just Gate C14, but every gate like it. Raymond's audit. It wasn't just about one agent. It was about a system that had let her behavior slide for years. And now the world was watching. Raymond sat in a quiet corner of the terminal, his Americano long gone cold. He wasn't taking notes now, just observing. The crowd at Gate C14 had thinned, but the energy hadn't. Passengers still whispered, phones still flashed. A young black couple with a baby approached the counter, greeted by a new agent who smiled and cooed at the child, helping them board early. It was a small moment, but it mattered. Raymond didn't need to record it. This wasn't for a report. It was for him. He stood, making his way toward the escalator. As he passed a wall of framed airline policies, his reflection caught in the glass. Older, worn, but steady. He thought about Stephanie Wilcox, not with anger but with clarity. Her mistake wasn't just tearing a passport. It was believing she'd never be questioned. People like Raymond had lived through that certainty their whole lives. Outside, the Atlanta air was thick with humidity. A middle-aged man with a cane stepped aside to let him pass through the security doors. They made brief eye contact, exchanging a slight nod. Raymond's ride waited at the curb. He slid into the back seat, and the driver, a woman with long braids, glanced at him through the mirror. "Mr. Dandridge, that's me. You're the guy from the video, right?" He gave a small smile. "I guess I am." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "My brother works TSA. He said folks at the airport been acting real different lately. I think you lit a fire." "I didn't light anything," Raymond said. "I just didn't let them put it out." They rode in silence, passing billboards along I-285. Then she spoke again. "People forget that stuff matters. Being seen, being heard, not being talked down to. They don't forget," Raymond said. "They're just taught not to expect it." She nodded. As they pulled up to his hotel, she asked, "You think things will actually change?" He paused, hand on the door handle. "I think they already are. But only if people keep speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable." That afternoon, Raymond sat in his hotel room, the TV muted but showing a news ticker about the incident. His phone buzzed with a message from FAA Internal Affairs. Toronto office confirms 3 similar complaints at Pearson over past year. Same airline, similar behavior. He didn't respond, just leaned back and rubbed his temples. This wasn't isolated to one airport. You don't get a pattern like this from a single bad hire. Stephanie Wilcox was the match, but the gasoline had been leaking for years. He opened his laptop and began drafting his report. 34 pages, meticulously organized, every detail timed to the minute. He wasn't writing for headlines or applause. He was writing for the system, for the people who'd come after him, for the ones who'd never know his name, but might board a plane one day without the weight of suspicion. The truth was bare, honest, and heavy, and it was enough. Raymond Dandridge sat at his desk in a modest Washington, D.C. office, the kind that didn't draw attention. Plain walls, a single window overlooking a parking lot, shelves lined with binders older than most of the FAA new hires. His chipped mug held lukewarm coffee, and his laptop screen glowed with the final draft of his 34-page report on the Gate C14 incident. Every detail was accounted for. The exact time Stephanie Wilcox tore his passport, her verbatim accusations, the crowd's reactions, the security footage timestamps, and the 4 prior complaints naming her. He'd also included notes on similar patterns at other airports, cross-referenced with FAA data from the past 8 months. It wasn't just a report. It was a blueprint for accountability, built with the precision of a man who'd spent 3 decades watching systems fail and fixing them quietly. His phone buzzed, a message from FAA Internal Affairs. Toronto office confirms 3 similar complaints at Pearson over past year. Same airline, similar behavior. Raymond leaned back, rubbing his temples. The pattern wasn't a surprise, but its scope was sobering. Stephanie Wilcox wasn't an anomaly, she was a symptom. The real issue was the silence that had let her behavior fester. Silence from supervisors, from passengers, from a system that hadn't flagged the complaints sitting in his folder. He saved the report and closed his laptop. The clock read 2:17 p.m. The day wasn't over, but the story was far from finished. Outside, the Atlanta airport was still reeling. Gate C14 looked the same on the surface. Same dull carpeting, same plastic chairs, same hum of boarding calls. But the air felt different. 2 new cameras had been installed above the counter, their lenses glinting with higher resolution. Every gate agent was now required to complete an updated training module within 72 hours, and supervisors had to file weekly incident logs for FAA review. It wasn't a revolution, but it was movement. Denise Trammell, a veteran agent who'd worked the terminal for 15 years, noticed the shift. "They're walking softer now," she told a coworker while scanning boarding passes. "Funny how quiet people get when somebody important gets treated the way we get treated all the time." Her coworker, Rico, a younger agent, looked up. "You ever work with her, Wilcox?" Denise gave a slow nod. "Twice. You could feel it, like the rules changed depending on who walked up to the counter." "Why didn't anybody say anything?" Rico asked. Denise met his eyes. Who would have listened? That question lingered as Rico returned to his work, his hands moving slower than usual. Meanwhile, the airline's legal department was in overdrive, launching an internal audit of all gate agent records over the past 5 years. Several names had already surfaced. A man in Miami, quietly transferred after multiple passenger conflicts. Another in Dallas, known for randomly selecting young men with dual citizenships for extra scrutiny. They hadn't made headlines yet, but after Wilcox, their days of anonymity were numbered. In the FAD.C. office, Wanda Kim, Director of Communications, stood before a large monitor, reviewing the latest updates. The Gate C14 video had surpassed 10 million views, shared across platforms from X to international news outlets like Al Jazeera and BBC. Comments poured in. "I've flown through that terminal. I know that look." She tore up a federal document like it was nothing. Raymond's name trended alongside hashtags like #GateC14 and #FAA Inspector. His photo, pulled from an old aviation safety conference, was now a symbol of quiet defiance. But it wasn't just sympathy. People were sharing their own stories. "She stopped me for looking nervous. I was late for my mother's funeral. She questioned my 12-year-old about his bag." "Who does that?" Wanda turned to her team. "He didn't reveal himself until she doubled down," she said, replaying the video. "Stayed in character, followed protocol. Let her show who she was. An aide nodded. Crowd was on his side. No aggression from him. Videos airtight. Have we pulled Wilcox's history? Wanda asked. 2 internal reports from LAX closed without review. Another aide replied. Complaints about aggressive behavior and bias. Nothing escalated until now. Wanda closed her laptop. Prepare a statement. FAA will cooperate with all reviews and issue recommendations for gate personnel on federal contracts. And get me a full report on similar complaints at the top 10 busiest airports. Back in Atlanta, Stephanie Wilcox sat in a conference room, her badge deactivated, her phone a graveyard of notifications. Screenshots, memes, and comments painted her as the villain of the hour. Imagine being this confident and this wrong. She didn't know he wrote the rule book. Her hands trembled as she scrolled, the weight of her actions sinking in. She didn't recognize this version of herself, or maybe she'd never had to. No manager had ever called her out. No passenger had pushed back. Until Raymond, Nicole Morales stepped in, her face unreadable. You'll be contacted by the FAA within 48 hours, she said, for questioning, a statement, and likely an inquiry into your history here and in Los Angeles. Stephanie's voice was faint. I didn't know. That's the problem, Nicole said, turning to leave. Raymond joined a virtual meeting with FAA regional inspectors, his screen filling with familiar and new faces from Detroit, Seattle, Tampa, and San Jose. Wanda Kim opened the call. Let's start with a round table. One thing you've seen this week that gives you hope. A woman from Philadelphia spoke first. An agent apologized to a passenger yesterday after questioning them too harshly. I've never seen that in 17 years. A Dallas inspector added, a gate team pulled one of their own aside, told her she was out of line. That never used to happen without a supervisor. When it was Raymond's turn, he spoke slowly. Hope doesn't come from policies. It comes from people willing to speak when something's wrong. Now that the public's seen what wrong looks like, they're asking the right questions. He paused. My job was never to embarrass anyone. It was to shine a light where things get ignored. The meeting stretched on, piling 7 follow-up tasks onto Raymond's plate. He wasn't chasing headlines. He wanted processes fixed, accountability enforced. But Wanda's words lingered. You may get both. The Office of Civil Rights was now coordinating with the FAA, and Congress was paying attention. The report wasn't just a document anymore. It was a spark. A week later, Raymond stood at a podium in a D.C. conference room, facing transportation executives, FAA investigators, and civil rights observers. Reporters had slipped in, despite it not being a press event. The story had outgrown its origins, fueled by a video that refused to fade. Raymond adjusted the microphone, his voice calm but direct. I wasn't trying to make an example of anyone, he began. I was doing what I've done for nearly 30 years, observing systems that hold up public safety and, occasionally, public trust. He let that sink in. When a gate agent tears up a passport because they don't like the look of the person holding it, that's not just misconduct, it's negligence, it's bias, and when it goes unchecked, it becomes policy in everything but name. The room stayed silent. He glanced at his notes, rewritten 3 times to strip away anything that sounded like spin. I've been asked if I forgive her. I don't know. That's not the point. The point is whether we're ready to change how things are done. A reporter from the Atlantic asked Mr. Dandridge, do you believe anything will actually change? He paused. People are watching now. That's a start. Back in Atlanta, the terminal had changed, but not entirely. A new memo, mandated random FAA monitoring for gate agents on international flights. Supervisors were now accountable for repeated complaints. Stephanie Wilcox had been terminated, her access revoked nationwide. In the employee break room, 2 agents sat as the memo scrolled across a flat screen. Another seminar. One muttered. Tanya, a 20-year veteran, shook her head. They can throw all the training they want at us. Until they hire people who treat passengers like humans, nothing sticks. A supervisor overheard, grabbing his coffee. You got something to say, Tanya. I already said it, she replied, unflinching. He didn't press further. Raymond, back at his desk, deleted interview requests without opening them. He wasn't chasing airtime, he was focused on the system. That afternoon, a Zoom call with FAA field officers brought more stories of small shifts. An apology in Philadelphia, a gate team self-correcting in Dallas. Hope wasn't in policies, it was in people speaking up. An email arrived from a former agent, subject line, "Wish I'd said something." The message was brief. "I worked next to her for 6 months. You were right to write it all down. Thank you." Raymond saved it in a folder labeled Testimonies. 2 weeks later, Raymond returned to Hartsfield-Jackson, not undercover this time. No briefcase, no hidden role. Just a man observing with clear eyes. Gate C14 looked familiar, but the staff seemed sharper or more cautious. An older woman asked about a delayed flight. The agent leaned forward, explaining kindly. A nervous man worried about a connection. A staffer walked him to the gate screen. A young black couple with a baby boarded early, the new agent smiling and cooing at the child. Small moments, but they mattered. Raymond took a seat, watching quietly. A mother snapped a photo of the couple as they boarded, likely to post with a caption like "Traveling with kindness today." He didn't record it. This wasn't for a file. It was for him. As he passed the wall of framed airline policies, his reflection caught in the glass, older, steady. Stephanie Wilcox's mistake wasn't just her action, it was her confidence that she'd never be questioned. People like Raymond had lived through that certainty their whole lives. Outside, the Atlanta air tugged at his jacket. His driver, a woman with long braids, glanced at him. "Mr. Dandridge, you're the guy from the video, right?" "I guess I am," he said with a small smile. "My brother works TSA, says folks are acting different now. You lit a fire." "I didn't light anything," Raymond said. "I just didn't let them put it out." She nodded. "People forget that stuff matters. Being seen, being heard." "They don't forget," Raymond said. "They're just taught not to expect it." At his hotel that night, the news played a clip from Minneapolis. A passenger questioned for not looking like his ID, but a supervisor stepped in, diffused it, apologized. It didn't make prime time, but it was something. Raymond closed his laptop, thinking of the generations behind him, the ones who might board a plane without suspicion's weight. They might never know his name. That was fine. What mattered was that someone had seen the truth and refused to look away. The silence was broken, but the noise was just beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Raymond felt it might be enough.
If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with others so they can learn something from it too.